My next patron question is from Joshua, who wanted me to compare two comedies with similar settings. Between the following two films, both of which were released within a short time of each other, about a mall security guard on a mission to take down a criminal in hopes of achieving his dream of being in the police academy, which is better, Paul Blart Mall Cop or Observe and Report? It is fascinating that two comedies about the same subject matter were released around the same time, although this is a fairly common occurrence in Hollywood. There's even a term for this, twin movies. The makers of both films were aware of the other's existence and apparently tried to avoid stepping on each other's toes. The tone and approach of both films are rather different though, but which do I prefer? I'm going to have to say Observe and Report. This movie is primarily a psychological character study of its lead character. It's not exactly trying to be the feel-good comedy of the year, but more something in the vein of Taxi Driver. That was an interesting approach to take, and I did find the best parts of the movie involved exploring the mental state of the lead protagonist, Ronnie. The film uses him as a commentary on how people with positions of authority might not be mentally fit for the role. At the time of the film's release, Seth Rogen was primarily known for playing lovable goofballs. This was something different than what audiences were accustomed to see him as, but showed he had the ability to play other types of roles. There's an intentional uncomfortableness that runs throughout the film as Ronnie gets more obsessive about showing what he's capable of and proving that he has the chops to be a legitimate policeman. Ray Liotta is particularly good as the detective who encounters Ronnie during an investigation for a flasher. You completely understand why he's annoyed at Ronnie through their interactions, although he eventually takes things too far with his actions. Outside of a woman working in the food court, you're not going to find any sympathetic characters in this movie. While Observe and Report is a moderately interesting character study, I personally felt it did fall short as a comedy. I did not laugh much during the movie as it's more reliant on shocking humor for the sake of it. For example, there's a scene where Rogen and Aziz Ansari just say the F word to each other. I think dropping F-bombs can be very funny when executed well. Quentin Tarantino and the Coen brothers are masters at using the world's most famous swear word for brilliant comedic effect. However, in this scene, the joke is just them saying the F word, and that's not particularly clever and amusing. There are other little creative decisions that do not quite land with me. Michael Pena puts on a silly voice when playing a fellow security guard, and I found it more annoying than funny. I was also not a fan of the ending. Overall, I find Observe and Report an okay film, but there was something daring with it despite the faults. Paul Blart Mall Cop, on the other hand, takes no such risks whatsoever. The idea of a mall security guard who ends up in a Die Hard-like situation has the potential to be funny. However, the film seems to waste that potential by going for one joke for almost the entire runtime. Paul Blart is fat. That is the main joke, whether it's a bit about how he likes to eat, or it's a physical gag where he rolls around on the floor, or something happens because of his weight. Maybe a few times they switch it up, like they might have a joke making fun of the way he looks on a Segway. You're just left with the most obvious entire jokes the filmmakers could have come up with. Kevin James is credited as one of the writers, so maybe he was okay with these, but I know he's capable of so much more. I have nothing against a purely stupid comedy. There are quite a few stupid comedies I like, but I barely laughed once during Paul Blart, and there's really not that much more to say about it. Although here's an interesting bit of trivia, one of the other writers on the movie who also came up with the initial idea is Nick Bakay, who's probably most well known for being the voice of Salem on Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Norbert on The Angry Beavers. So now I'm picturing an episode of Sabrina where Salem writes a screenplay about an overweight mall security guard out of his own twisted amusement, and then through a series of comical situations is stunned when a Hollywood studio actually buys it and it becomes a hit movie. And yes, Paul Blart Mall Cop was a big hit. And hey, I get it. Sometimes audiences just want a simple comedy they can just put their feet up and laugh with. Paul Blart gave them exactly that, and there's nothing wrong with that. To be honest, I don't think Observe and Report was ever going to appeal to a mass audience. It's just a difficult film for a studio to market due to it being a very dark comedy with a disturbed character played by an actor taking on a role different than what made him popular with viewers. However, it has found a cult following over the years who appreciate what the filmmakers were setting out to do. Now let me know in the comments whether you prefer Paul Blart Mall Cop or Observe and Report, and thank you for your question, Joshua.